What's going on, guys? MacDowan here, and today I'm happy to present to you my build guide and showcase for the Omniscience Tornado Shot Deadeye. If you like the music at the beginning of the video, there's a link to my music channel in the description where you can hear more stuff like that. I'll also be uploading a backing track version of that track that does not have the melody lines, so you can use it for a practice tool or maybe even to throw down your own solo over top of it. But as far as Tornado Shot is concerned, this build has crushed basically all mapping scenarios that I've been able to throw at it over the last week or so. There are some caveats. It's not a budget build. It's not beginner friendly. The skill cap as far as having to dodge and do stuff like that is much higher than something like RF, particularly in boss encounters. And the build is very finicky to get set up. There are more variables that can cause things to not function in a way that ruins your game experience. And so we're going to go over all of that in detail. I'm going to talk about the tree, the gear, all of that stuff. So if all of that interests you, hit that like and subscribe button and let's go. Alright, I thought we would start with a map showcase so I can talk about a few things before we get into the meat and potatoes of the build. And also so that I can give a few disclaimers and just talk about a few caveats for the build. So we're just going to do a 60% Delirious Crimson Temple map, nothing special here. Not rolled with Beyond or anything like that. It does have vulnerability on it. We're not 100% curse immune, so we do have to deal with that. But generally speaking, pretty easy map. Nothing real crazy with the Sextants. And we're going to throw Domination on there, and we've just got some cheap Scarabs, some Breach, Cartography, Ambush, and Harbinger. And here we are on the map. I'm hoping that this video can serve as both a guide for the build itself, but then also as sort of an opinion piece or guide or whatever of the concept of making a second build where you purchase either all of the gear or the majority of the gear before you've leveled the character. And then you sort of level the character, slot the gear on, and then you have to get everything set up, but then you're ready to go. And so that was a new experience for me. So, and as you can see, it does chug. It does chug a little bit. Now, why did I pick Tornado Shot? And there's a few reasons for that. As you know, I was playing Righteous Fire. Oh, we got some kind of a drop here. Cool. I wanted a character that, contrary to the RF setup, would have more baseline move speed, which we've achieved. I wanted a character that could more comfortably do 60%, 70, or 60 to 100 Delirium, and we've achieved that. And I wanted a character that had better damage projection and control for when I'm doing Sentinels, because the RF character, after you gear it to a certain point, particularly as a result of Asenath's Gentle Touch, the mobs will blow up, start chaining, even if you don't have RF on, no buffs are up, nothing. So I wanted something where I could wait to do the damage, and then pull the trigger. Unfortunately, that did not really work. Not at least in the sense that I was hoping. Especially at the beginning of the map when you don't have buffs, there is no such thing on this character as run and grab a bunch of mobs and stand there while you wait for the Sentinel to buff them up. You're just dead. So I had to sort of change the way I approach the Sentinels. And in the end, it works just fine, but it in the sense of, I was hoping to sort of have the same approach as with the RF guy. I just run into the map and sort of corral up all the mobs and then, hit the button and wait. And then I have control of when I push the button and blow everything up. It's not really like that. I am going to use the red Sentinel now. Let it, now we should have enough buffs. We can just kind of hang out and wait for it to buff stuff up. grab that. Keep thinking that's a breach. Another reason that I wanted to play this build was, you know, frankly, just because of the Celestial MTX, and I haven't played a bow build in a very long time. Depending on how you define what a true bow build is, I've never played a bow build. The only thing I've really played that equipped a bow at all was a Death's Oath character a few leagues ago, and then way back in the day I played Voltaxic Spark. And so I've just never really experienced the bow glass cannon playstyle. And the Headhunter allows you to build that way and then still actually complete content like I'm completing right now. Whereas on the RF character, 60% Delirious would often get kind of nasty. And if we added Beyond to the mix, like triple Beyond, so on and so forth, it really started to get crazy. So that's what the mapping looks like if you're just kind of doing, you know, 40, 60% Delirious. If you throw the Beyond on there, I will say you're going to get some more performance issues. I'm running a new i7 and some kind of a 1060 graphics card. I can't remember if it's the Super or what, but something in that range. 32 gigs of RAM, all of that stuff. I can do really intensive video editing and other games that are pretty demanding, and I have no issues ever. It's only in Path of Exile and only when I do super juiced content with this build that I have the problems. And I think that is a result of the secondary projectiles. So I haven't used them at all in the showcase here, but I'll throw down my turrets here. And even just with that, I don't know if you can tell in the video, but it's already like I'm losing frames just because of, and this is with almost no buffs. Once you're all juiced up, if you just hold the trigger down in like 100% Delirious map, and in fact, I believe I put some 100% Delirious footage in the showcase roll at the beginning of the video, you can just fully lock the screen up. So there's a good, another thing I should mention too. The most dangerous part of these maps is looting at the end, because eventually your buffs fall off and you're not actively like defending yourself from the mobs, and so they will just they'll just kind of roll in, like even just a couple of them, and they can just rob you, take your lunch money, and just leave you on the side of the road, and you just don't even know what happened. So let's see, I'll swing through here and pick up the rest of the loot, and then I will meet you back in my hideout, and we will go over the gear and all of that stuff. I just wanted to make sure and actually show what it looks like when I'm doing a fairly representative map for what I do on a day-to-day basis, so that you could get an idea if the play style is to your taste. So yep, let's hop back over to the hideout and we'll go over everything else. Now, before I go over the gear, I did want to mention a couple resources that I used when I was trying to get everything set up. I took a look at the 3.17 tornado shot guide that Path of Math created. That's a really in-depth resource, and I did change a lot of stuff once I set it up, but I did find that that was a very useful baseline. It had a lot of the information that I needed to figure out how to scale stuff and what stats I absolutely needed, what stuff I could skimp on, so on and so forth. So that was a very useful resource. And then I also took quite a bit of inspiration from Bower Mage's adventures with Tornado Shot at the beginning of this league. And the end result is quite different from either of those setups, and is much more tailored to my specific taste. It is not a bosser. I think that you could take the original setup with the highest possible DPS using Secrets of Suffering, so on and so forth. You can probably complete every encounter in the game, dependent upon your understanding of the fights and your mechanical skill level at the game. The current setup that I'm using is not being used for that, nor did I have that in mind when I was making changes. I wanted to maximize my own mapping experience and be able to devastate the bosses that I encounter through that sort of gameplay loop. I didn't make this character with the intention of, I'm going to build this and then start tackling a different kind of content. So keep that in mind when you're deciding how you want to set the build up yourself. But I would recommend taking a look at both of those other content creators' very nice stuff that they've made on this build before you go about setting it up. So let's talk about the gear. Now, currently I have 1,283 omniscience, and that is just shy of capping all the resists, so you will have to solve out for your fire resist. I believe I needed like 2 more or something, so you will need to play around a little bit to get that set up, unless you get gear that has, I don't know, 50-ish more omniscience than what I have. Then you can probably at that point just ignore resistances on gear entirely. So the bow, we've got an additional arrow, and then the 3 different added damage types. We are running an elemental setup. The cold res is not necessary, but it is on there, and then we've got double damage and attack speed. On the gloves, we're doing spell suppression and rage for the implicits, and then we are stacking spell suppression in the build. We want that capped at 100% for a couple reasons that we'll go over when we're talking about the tree. We do need a 415-ish plus accuracy roll on the gloves, and it is nice to have that evasion roll on there as well, but not necessary. And then, of course, life and the attack speed. The stun block recovery is a dead mod. You could spend more and get a better mod in that place if you so desire. Headhunter, obviously. The boots that we're using, Chaos Res Implicit, Intelligence, for a little bit of extra Omni. Obviously, you would want a higher roll than that, but I actually bought the wrong boots in the first place, so I resold those and then bought these, and there just weren't any available that were even close to this range of price that had the larger intelligence roll with the rest of the stats on there. So we've got movement speed, onslaught chance, elusive on crit, which is huge, and then additional attack, cast, and movement speed. Well, we have onslaught, and then tailwind effect, and the last line there is dead because we get tailwind automatically in the build, and then a little bit of life at the end. The rings are standard omniscience rings, both of them, with Chaos Res Implicits, omniscience. The quiver, we've got an additional arrow on there. We've got projectile speed, crit multi. The added lightning damage is okay. We've got a life roll, and then we've got damage with bows and attack speed crafted. And then for the helmet, we are using Asenath's Chant, pretty standard. And our chest piece, we've got anger effect and damage recoup for the implicits, and then spell suppression to get us capped up. Another stat roll similar to the boots, where you could certainly spend more and get a bigger roll. I didn't feel like I needed to. Nice healthy life roll, increased max life, lightning resistance roll, which we sort of need, but again, you don't have to have that on the gear. And the reflect is a dead mod. Again, you can spend more and get better mods if you feel like you need it. And then I crafted life and mana. So those are the equipped items. Our flask setup, we're running Amethyst, and all of them are going to have used when charges reach full and gain 6 or 7 charges when you're hit by an enemy, and we'll talk about why that is in a minute. We've got the regeneration, life regeneration, as the secondary on that flask. Then we're running a diamond with attack speed. We are running a jade flask with increased evasion. We're doing a quartz flask for phasing and also the reduced effective curses. And then we're just doing a standard quicksilver with additional move speed. Now let's real quick look at the Pantheon. We're running Soul of the Brine King, all the way upgraded with your Divine Vessels. And then we are running Soul of Shakari. And the reason that I'm doing that is because of the Flame and Flesh setup that we're using. I would normally be using the Ralakesh for the bleeding thing, because I like to just eat the bleeds and keep running, but we don't need to do that because of some other gearing choices that we have made. So that is the gear and the Pantheon. And now real quick, let's take a look at the gems. In the bow, we've got our Ballista Totem, our elemental damage with attacks, increased crit damage, Tornado Shot, Focused Ballista, and added Cold. In the helmet, we have our Power Charge on crit, Tornado, Sniper's Mark, and Hydrosphere. And that stuff will trigger automatically because of the helmet when we do our pew-pews. In the chest for our main damage setup, increased crit damage, Trinity support, Tornado Shot, Inspiration, Awakened elemental damage with attacks, and Awakened greater multiple projectiles. Gloves, we've got our Grace, Precision, Anger, Herald of Ice. And then finally in the boots, we have Berserk, Vitality, Flame Dash, and Blood Rage. And that is the basic setup. I will have a POB either in the pinned comment or the description box, so you can go through it with a fine-tooth comb if you desire. But that is the essential gearing setup that we have. And again, we're sitting at about 1280 omniscience, and that's our Pantheon setup. So let's go ahead and talk about the skill tree. So we'll start with the Ascendancy. We're coming up through Ricochet and grabbing Endless Munitions. Then we're going to grab Gathering Winds, and finally Focal Point. We're going to come up through here. We're going to come down and grab some prod speed, some damage. We need these two nodes for our mana. And then we're going to come through here, grabbing some life, and then come down here for finesse and quick step. And as you can see, we're getting 5% chance to deal double damage on that node because of the roll on our Lethal Pride. Then we're going to come up here, Reservation Efficiency, here and get the Jewel. This is our Impossible Escape. Another thing that I discovered when I was running my RF character. I don't know if it's optimal, but I really enjoyed it on the RF character, and I wasn't using very many of the nodes, whereas on this character we can utilize tons of them. So we're getting crit multi and crit chance here. Overcharged is just, quality of life wise, it's one of the best nodes on the tree in my opinion. We're getting some spell suppression and big evasion here. Accuracy and proj damage, and then some extra omniscience with the dex. Hired Killer is my favorite node, I think, of the league on the tree. I love this node. It is incredibly powerful. You notice it when you turn it on. You notice it when you turn it off. You can't beat 7% max life and 2% of life recovery on Kill. It really just, it ties stuff together. It fixes up a lot of the loose ends in a build. I can't say enough about that node. It's fantastic. Come through here, grab our evasion circle there. Come over here, and we're going to do the traditional Lionized Fall setup, so we can grab all of these nodes and have them turned into bow damage nodes. Very good there. You're getting a bunch of attack speed, you're getting power and endurance charges, etc. And then we're going to come down here, and we're going to grab Master Fletcher. We're going to grab this Crit Mastery Wheel. We're going to grab this Accuracy Mastery Wheel and the Life Mastery Wheel. And then we're going to come over here, and that's where our Lethal Pride is. Got that rolled so that I think you could probably get much better, because there's a lot of mods on here that aren't very good, but I got 5% double damage here and here, and then 5% increased strength, and that seemed to be good enough. I'm not entirely sure. See, there's Warcry buff effect. That's no good. If you guys know what the ideal rolls are for this particular jewel, I'm willing to sit and throw divines on it. I've never used a Lethal Pride before, so I'm not even 100% sure what all the possible things that can roll on these are. I figured one good Omni stat and a couple of double damage was good enough. So then we're going to come down this way. We're going to grab the Projectile Mastery Wheel, Spell Suppression Mastery, and this is so that we can get the critical strike chances increased by chance to suppress spell damage. Big stuff there. We're going to grab the entire Attribute Mastery Wheel, come down here, grab your Point Blank, and finally Mark Mastery here. quick, I'll talk about the jewels and stuff. So for cluster jewels, this is pretty standard with Feed the Fury, Fuel the Fight, and Martial Prowess. And then for the mediums, we're running Repeater and Eye to Eye, again, pretty standard. Here is the Replica Conqueror's Efficiency. And then here's our Watcher's Eye. I've got one with Life on Hit with Vitality and increased movement speed with Grace. You can get a damage mod on there as well. You can get crit with Precision, I believe. So that would be nice, but quite pricey. Then coming down here, finally, we've got another of the standard large cluster setups. I don't have enough points to do 2 more mediums yet, and I haven't felt the need to spend the time it would take to figure out exactly what points to drop and level the character up the last 2 points to 100 to get that set up, because I'm fine where I'm at. And so I used this large cluster to slot in our Forbidden Flesh and Forbidden Flame, which have Master Surgeon on them. There are, again, much more powerful damage options that you can take if you feel like you want more damage, or if you are planning on doing specific bossing strategies, that type of thing. But Master Surgeon really pulls the build together with the Flasks set up the way that we have them. They're going off all the time. It's huge life recovery. And you just can't beat the removal of corrupted blood and bleeding that comes along with that. So I think that just about covers everything for the character itself. There are just a few topics that I want to touch on at the end here, just to make sure that nobody comes away with any false impressions of what the build is. So DPS wise, my understanding is with the original setup, and again, I've said this before, I am not a POB power user. I'm not interested in spending a ton of time to figure out exactly what checkboxes need to be checked or what values need to be inputted so that it displays the maximum correct DPS number. I don't care. But having said that, my understanding is that the original setup with Secrets of Suffering, with basically the same gear that I have on, should be somewhere between 35 and 50 million. I believe that the setup that I had was probably closer to the 35 to 40 range. And then I made lots of changes that reduced that damage because, frankly, it was just way more damage than I needed. And the character was too glass cannon-esque for my playstyle. And so I estimate that I may be somewhere around 20 to 25 million at this point. But that's mostly inference, and again, I don't know 100% how to set the POB up so that it's displaying all the values correctly, so on and so forth. But if you play builds like what I play, and you play content like what you see me playing, this build has lots of damage. Damage is not a problem. Crit. I believe you can achieve 100% crit chance with Secrets of Suffering via Brittle. And I believe I was achieving that in, again, the original setup before I did any of the things to make the character enjoyable. I have felt throughout the entire process that I did not need 100% crit, and Brittle actually negates your ability to do shatters with Herald of Ice. And so the only way that you can get any kind of explosions then at that point is by going with a Crusader chest or an Athenos Gentle Touch. Those are the two main ways that I would know of. And I didn't want to do that. And so I opted for not using Secrets of Suffering so that I could enjoy the full glory of Herald of Ice. And again, that also comes with it's doing less damage than it could do with the maximum, DPS setup. So keep that in mind. Trinity is another thing that I do not fully understand exactly how to min-max the interaction with the gem. My understanding is if you make sure that the added damage values from each element of the three, make sure that the maximum and minimum values are such that at any given time, any one of the three damage types can be the highest damage type that is being deployed at that moment. and then Trinity should function in the way that we want it to function. But again, this is a scenario where if you are trying to play Path of Building and you just want to see how much possible big number can you achieve, you probably need to find a different content creator, because I'm not interested in that, and so I don't have the information for you. My goal is to make the build work for the scenario in which I'm using it, and I only care about the numbers insofar as they allow me to get closer to those goals or serve as guideposts for my progression. I'm not going to spend half of my day trying to figure out exactly how to make POB calculate brittle. I'm just not going to do that. And so there are tons of creators that are very interested in doing exactly that type of more numeric-based analysis and gameplay. So the budget for the build is something that I struggle generally with in making these videos about discussing. And this is the method that I have settled on. I'm not going to go over the individual price of any one item, because that seems like it only creates confusion for the viewer and results in people expecting to get a specific piece for a specific value, and the changing nature of the market is such that it's rarely going to be the case that I say this item is 5x, and then you go and get an identical item with the exact same rolls for exactly 5 exalted. In my experience, that doesn't happen, and so it creates a scenario where I don't want to say that it comes off like I'm being dishonest, but it makes it feel like the information is unreliable or subject to change in ways that could be misleading for newer players. I don't want to say you need this 5x ring or you need this 10x chest piece, and then have somebody that doesn't normally make very much currency spend 2 weeks grinding to get 5x, and then it turns out, well, you're actually going to need to spend 7.5. So the way that I'm going to describe it to you is in totals. So for this build, I spent myself, so the prices could vary, but my spending was 120x, roughly, for the Headhunter and the Omniscience. I then spent an additional 150x on the base set of gear that I then equipped onto the character once I had leveled it. I spent about 12x, maybe 15, on 5-way carries to get myself up to level 97, 98. And then finally, I estimate that I spent between 15 and 25, 30x in incidentals. So that's jewels, awakened gems, fixing, after I got an upgrade, I realized, the boots didn't have the right mod, so I sold the boots I bought first and then bought new ones, and so I made back a little bit of money, but I spent more on the second pair than the first pair. So when I tried to go back and kind of add all that stuff up, my best guess is that after everything was on the character, I then spent an additional, like I said, 15 to 30 C or Exalt, just getting everything figured out and set up so that it worked. And so that is everything that I think I have to say about the Tornado Shot build. I guess it makes sense to, at the very end here, sort of like offer a review of the build. And I would say I enjoyed Righteous Fire more on almost every level. It is fun to be more zoomy, and it was interesting to use the Headhunter in a scenario where I was relying on its buffs much more than I was on the Righteous Fire character. And certainly when I'm doing 100% Delirium content, or when I'm really in the mode where I need to make some currency, so I'm doing the full max juice, this character was more powerful. But there's a lot of stuff that is a little clunky. You've got the performance issues, you've got the squishiness of the character in general. There's a little bit of weirdness that can happen at the beginning of the map. If you're not careful and you just kind of run in, you can die right off the bat because you don't have any buffs. So for me, the build it's better than just okay, but it's not, holy shit, this build is amazing, you have to try and play this if you get a chance this league. I would say as an experience of picking a build before I had played it, saving up a bunch of currency, buying the gear, figuring out how to set it up, and then eventually getting it running and farming content for the purpose of making a video and all of that stuff, I had a pretty good time with it. But I think that you could probably do a lot better than what I was able to achieve for the price tag of 350 Exalt. And so in the end, I would say it's a fun build to try, but it didn't really excel in all of the areas that I was hoping that it was going to in relation to the Righteous Fire character. So, and then I guess the last thing I want to mention here is I've been really humbled by the number of people that have been watching these videos. I've gotten so many nice comments about not only the content itself, but also the music that I'm producing and putting out with these videos. And I didn't really expect when I started doing Path of Exile content that that I would get so much immediate support from not only other streamers and content creators, but just the players in general. Almost everyone has been universally nice, supportive, genuine. It seems like a lot of people are actually getting some value out of the content, which is really rewarding for me. I'm happy that that's the case. And yeah, I mean, I say I appreciate everybody at the end of these videos, but that's not a platitude. I mean that. This has been it's been an experience that has allowed me to reorient myself as an artist, and it's forced me to create at a time in my life when I was struggling to sort of create the motivation to compose. And so, yeah, the gratitude levels are very high. I really do appreciate all you guys stopping by, checking out the content. I appreciate all the comments, all of that stuff. So, going forward, I am planning on one more build for the league, some kind of a meme, perhaps an Earthquake Sentinel Farmer. I am really interested in doing something with the Crystal Earthquake MTX. I think it looks really cool. The concept being, let's see if we take like a similar budget to what we did with the Tornado Shot character here, but we just throw it into a character that really isn't probably going to work super well, but we just see if we can, you know, brute force it with currency. I've always wanted to do something like that, and I think I'm in a position where I'll have enough currency to make that happen. And so I'll be excited to bring that to you guys when I can. Also, I want to do more of the beginner guides. There's a few other ideas that I have for that. Those have been more successful than I expected, and they seem to be helping people. So I want to continue to build up the suite of that type of content that exists on the channel, so I can reference people to that when they have questions, stuff like that. This video was a large project in the sense that particularly composing the music was a challenge. I had to scrap almost a completed composition because I wasn't happy with it. Just sort of general artist anxiety issues that cropped up. But now that that is complete, I'm hoping to return to a more regular, maybe 2 to 3 videos during the Monday through Friday week, and an extra one on the weekend if I have something of value to share. But that is the plan going forward. There will be more content for the foreseeable future in this league, probably with a break at the very end. And then we are going to go absolutely hard in 3.19. I'm very excited to take what I've learned both about content creation, video editing, music production, all of that stuff in the recent 5 to 6 months, and apply that to a fresh league where I can hit the ground running. So I look forward to seeing you guys along the journey as we continue, and I will be back very soon with another video. Yeah, please do hit that like and subscribe button. I appreciate you.